All right, welcome into Gallagher-Iba Arena. Mason Both, KSU fan, Drew Galloway here with you as we begin Sunday morning. So good morning to everybody out there that stayed up to watch the end of that game, and more importantly, stayed up to enjoy a little KSO postgame live. You will be rewarded for that. How, I don't know, but hopefully we can help kind of enjoy the pain with you right now as K-State loses another one to start Big 12 play. 84-83, the final score, and the loss to Oklahoma State. K-State is now 9-9. They are 0-5 in Big 12 play. That is the worst start since who? KSU FAN?
Tom Asbury, I believe.
That would be correct. Your boy Tom Asbury, Tan Tom, and K-State now sits in a not very good position because this is the worst situation that they have been in for a start to Big 12 play, obviously. And we know last year they dipped all the way down to 7-11. That's not very good. But the fact that this team keeps having more than enough opportunities to right some of these wrongs or get right, and they're missing them, it's a little different than last year's team where you feel like, they beat Cincinnati. They lost that heartbreaker, kind of weird, close one to TCU that maybe threw them off for a little bit because they came here and got blasted last year. But then after that, they faced a gauntlet. They faced number 2 Houston. They faced Texas Tech, another top 10 team, Allen Fieldhouse, and then on the road at Baylor. And they really competed well in all of those games aside from Houston. And then they went on the 6-game winning streak that essentially, put the season on life support. This year, it's a little different because outside of the Arizona game, you've only played one unwinnable game to start this thing, and you've lost all of them. And now it's a 3-point loss at Arizona State, another home game that gets away from you against a beatable team like UCF. And then tonight, absolute heartbreak for K-State. They were leading with 5 seconds to play. They get tagged for a foul in the corner on a 3-point attempt. Oklahoma State buries all 3. Funny enough, Drew and I were talking right as they were getting ready to shoot, and we were like, hey, what's he shoot? And Drew said, well, he's 81% from the season. And then the kiss of death was him saying, and he's 1 of 2 tonight. And so I said, if he makes 3, what's 4 or 5? 80%. So the percentages were not in K-State's favor when Victorious Miller went to the line to ice the game for the Pokes and give them a win. And K-State, after Utah's win today, is the only team without a win in Big 12 play so far this season. So I'll open it up to just the general thoughts to start the show from the both of you and what stood out. And Drew is here with us tonight. He gets to go first.
It was a fun game. It was a lot more fun than I think that any of us thought coming into it. Like, we thought it was going to be maybe an uglier game if it was close, or, that Oklahoma State was going to run away with it potentially. So to have the game be fun and then K-State lose, and bad teams find ways to lose, and they find ways to lose that amaze you. And tonight is one of those that it is a loss that amazes me a little bit. K-State was up that 2 points with 58 seconds left and didn't get the ball back until there was 2 seconds left because they couldn't get a rebound, and then ended up having that foul in the corner. So it was just all around a performance that makes a bad team. And the season was over after they lost at Arizona State with what they had left to play. But now we say tongue in cheek that it's not necessarily over, but they would have to go 10-3 to go 10-8 over the last 13. So it's pretty much done at this point.
Yeah, it's we talked about the first half was very up and down, very fast paced. Both teams were making shots, but again, it comes down to K-State's just can't play good enough defense for 40 minutes. I tweeted out with, I think, about 8 minutes left that K-State was in position to be in position. They've done that before. They were in that kind of spot at Arizona State, sort of in that spot. Against UCF at home, it was a tight 2-possession game down the stretch. And can they ever get enough stops down the stretch to get a win? And it looked like they were almost there, just could not get that rebound secured at the end. They had 2 chances at it, and then the foul. But then you go back to the first half. You give up 48 points, 1.3 points per possession. You really don't play any defense, and you're down by 5. And on the road, those are the things that get you and cause you to lose games. I'll give them credit. Oklahoma State got up 10 pretty early in the second half. It looked like it was going to be over. And K-State battled back, got the lead back, kind of went back and forth. And then, like we said, you thought you had 2 big buckets by P.J. Haggerty down the stretch, last couple minutes of 3, and then the little runner, both to give them a lead. And you thought maybe this was going to be the time that they got over the top and made enough plays. But you just have so many things, even though you're 11% better from 2 and you're 11% better from 3. But Oklahoma State shoots 19 more free throws, and they outscore you by 18 on the free throw line. Oklahoma State forces 16 turnovers, and they weren't a team that forces a lot of turnovers, and they outscore you 26-10 off turnovers. Oklahoma State is not a great rebounding team, and you even out-rebound them total, but Oklahoma State outscores you on second chance points 23-16, including those last 3 points to win the game. So you have all those little things that go wrong for you, and even though you have the shooting night we expect from this team, because that's their MO, is they're going to shoot the ball, all the other things add up, and you're not going to win games, and that's really what happened, and K-State just couldn't get it done, and I think Drew's right. Bad teams find ways to lose, and K-State found a way to lose tonight when they should have won this game.
Yeah, and to me, that's going to be what sticks out is when you have a night shooting the basketball like K-State did, you're supposed to win those games in conference play because there aren't going to be many teams that can touch what they did tonight. I mean, I got a text from somebody at halftime and made some comment about how, K-State shot, made 8 threes in the first half, and they're still somehow down by what they are. And it's like, yeah, it's impressive to watch how they're doing it. And it goes back to what I've said, where this team doesn't have one singular problem or even a couple of big ones that you can focus in on. It's just anything and everything could be a problem for this team on any given night. And that's what makes it so hard to accept that this thing could get better, which is, I think, what Jerome Tang just wants us to do, is to act like, hey, the last 2 years didn't happen. They know what's going on, and they're going to get it figured out, and people just need to believe. But, that's not what this is. Sports isn't just about belief. It's belief being backed off of things that you've done to get there. So, you could say, well, Bo Nix obviously just got hurt for the Broncos. Well, the Broncos can have some belief because they just went and took care of business in overtime against the Bills, and they're only 2 wins away from winning the Super Bowl. This is not the Broncos starting the season with Jarrett Stidham as their starting quarterback and saying, hey, just believe it. We're going to be there. We're going to be playing in the AFC Championship at the end of the season. It's like, that's not really how this works, especially if they started, 1-7 to the season and just go, hey, we just got to win the last 8 games and we're good. And that's the problem with K-State right now, is that they're in a position where, like Jerome Tang is saying, that they have time. And that's the difference between this team and the last 2, is that the last 2 ran out of time. This one has time. Well, you're 0-5. You have to go 10-3 at least right now to close this thing out. And the hardest part of your schedule's left. That's one of the things when I did the show by myself yesterday, I didn't hit on because I didn't feel like it was consequential enough. And I felt like I was already hitting enough of the key points. But he made the comment about, well, I told you guys that, through the first 5 games of Big 12 play, we could play well and be 1-4 or 0-5 or whatever. And it's just like, if that's the mentality for these 5 games, then you're in for a world of hurt for the last 13, because after you play Utah on Tuesday, there's nothing easy about what's left for K-State. The worst team that you could have played, you already played them last weekend. You lost to them. One of the easier places that you can go on the road to play based off of opponent and crowd, although this was easily the best crowd that I've seen in Gallagher-Iba since I've been coming here tonight. You lost that game, and you lost to a team that should be very beatable at home in UCF. And then you never really threaten BYU, who is clearly a gettable team, even though they are really good. And so that's just where it's so hard for me to buy into what's being given, because it just feels like there's never any real answers. And I'll defer to Drew on this one, but one of the stories of the night, obviously, is Kamari McGriff played really well, but he fouled out of the game. And we were talking really early in the game about what did he do foul-wise at UNC Wilmington the last couple of seasons. And so Drew went and looked, and, you can see, obviously, there's a big increase in terms of total fouls, but do you have his per 40 numbers on fouls on you, Drew? No, Drew's muted.
It's
classic.
7.
That's the classic KSO show move.
It's a 7.4, which is almost double what he did at UNC Wilmington, which is fascinating, and why you went in and asked what is he doing differently, and we thought that this was a good question to ask and kind of gave Jerome Tang a chance to really go to bat for Kamari McGriff, and there really wasn't any of that, and McGriff kind of didn't give quite the answer that we anticipated either. He kind of talked about how he's just being really physical and has put on a lot of muscle and needs to do better in that sense. But that's a good answer for McGriff. But I would have anticipated Tang being a little more ready to go to bat for his guy, because Kamari McGriff is so important for K-State that when he only plays 14 minutes, it's going to be tough for them to win games. So this was a time for him to really go and say, hey, yeah, I don't really know what's going on. He doesn't foul a lot and didn't foul a lot at his previous stop. And in conference play alone, that's where it's almost 8. So I get that the Big 12 is a much more physical league than what he came from, but is it he's not getting a fair whistle? Is it he is just doing certain stuff that he didn't used to do? It was kind of just like a non-answer, and that's kind of what I was most disappointed in, because that was the time to really say, hey, he is doing this, or he needs to do this, and he didn't really get that.
Yeah, for reference, Kamari McGriff leads the Big 12 in fouls this season at 60 after he added 5 more tonight. That is 5 more than anybody else in the league. JoJo Tugler at Houston is unsurprisingly right behind him. Now, Houston, they play tomorrow, correct?
Yes.
So, I guess he could even the score if he wanted, if he gets 5. But that's a high number. There are only 5 total players in the Big 12 that have 50 or more fouls committed this season. And keep in mind, number 5 on that list with 52 is Elias Rapiak, who has not played a handful of games this season. And look, we know that he is also out there and is a little overly physical at times. But, before I even asked about McGriff to Jerome Tang, I was just asking if he thought that they got, an unfair whistle. And it's not like that, hey, the refs are taking games from you, but you see tonight with the free throw discrepancy that was going to catch some people's eye. And it's, to me, I focus more on the little things where it's like, and Jerome Tang talked about not getting a timeout on the loose ball at the end of the game, when we saw Oklahoma State get one on the loose ball, and we saw some shoves or some weird actions, and K-State didn't get the benefit, and it seemed like Oklahoma State did at times. So I found it to be interesting, the answer he gave, because you would have thought, like Drew was getting at, this is your chance to step up and defend one of your guys, and he really didn't do it. He just kind of just kind of passed it off to the next thing. So fascinating how he handled that. In terms of what took place on the floor, Fan, what did you pick up on that was maybe better for K-State tonight, other than just knocking down shots? Or was it that simple? They made shots tonight. Sometimes they don't, and it's still not good enough.
I mean, I thought you had pretty good play from 3 of your 4 guards. Haggerty ended up with 21 points and a pretty good efficiency of around 100, which is pretty good because his usage is so high. That makes a big difference. Nate Johnson ended up going 4 for 9 for 3. had 5 assists and 3 turnovers. So that's a solid night from him, 110 or 1.10 efficiency for him. And then Abdi Bashir, 5 for 11 from 3. So your guards combined to go 14 of 29 from 3 and make 48%. So the shooting part stands out, but they also had 11 assists, but then the 11 turnovers is, that's a problem. PJ Haggerty leads your team in rebounding with 8. So I think he does a good job of going after rebounds and things like that, and that aggressiveness. But just that I thought we saw them start to play a little bit more defense in that second half after they got down by 10. Better on the ball defense, than letting Oklahoma State get to the lane so much. The big guy for Oklahoma State was a challenge for K-State, and they struggled against him. And then Roy came off the bench. He didn't start, but then he led him in scoring, I think, with 21, and he was a challenge for K-State as well. But they just have those little mistakes, and again, they need all 4 of those guys to play well. David Castillo only has 3 points. They combined for 53. I've said multiple times that the target for those 4 have to be 60 points combined. Because you get the McGriff game. I mean, he scored 14 points in 14 minutes on the floor. Like, you'll take that all the time because that's super efficient basketball. But again, the foul trouble really gave K-State fits in that regard, and the free throw disparity. But I agree. PJ Haggerty said it. This happens on the road. That's kind of part of the deal. And Oklahoma State's really good at getting the free throw line, and we know K-State fouls a lot. So we kind of knew going in that was going to be an issue. But there's, Coach Tang has talked about it, and we should be here in year 4. But this team has 0 margin for error, and we saw that again tonight. The margin for error came up, and once those errors happened, they couldn't win the game.
Did you like the approach that K-State seemed to take at the end of the game in terms of what they were trying to get shooting-wise? I think it made more sense once Jerome Tang explained what their logic was on it. I think some people are going to be upset. It certainly doesn't look good with the result that you get, and we know that hoping for a foul has not gone over well in the past for K-State in these situations, but it does make a lot of sense. And, O-State had, I think, 4 fouls at that point in time. And Jerome Tang said, hey, we were thinking that they might try to foul us because they had them to give, and they got the shot up. So did you like that approach or understand it at least?
I understood it, but I would have rather got the ball inside the arc. If you think they're going to foul, run an action to get the ball closer to the rim. So if you're going to throw up a prayer, and plus it's a 1-point game, like you only needed 2 to win. And I know it's easier to get the ball in out that deep, but I think you can get a lot better inbound play to get the ball inside the arc to get that kind of shot.
I also think that if you're gonna do something like that, it needs to be with your best shooter and not a shooter, not a guy that is not known for being a shooter but can shoot the ball.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
And you have plenty of times to catch the ball with 2 seconds and turn and shoot. You don't have to catch it going to the basket. So that's the other thing about it too.
Yeah, I understood where he was coming from. I think just at the end, like, how many times do you actually get that call out there? And if you're thinking, well, we just got nailed for one in the corner, it's a little different. It was a legitimate shot. Abdi Bashir kind of just ran directly into the guy and gave it there. So I don't know. It's it's just not a great spot that K-State sits in right now with how things are rolling for them. What did you guys make of all the questions that Jerome Tang fielded after the game? We talked a little bit about the foul thing, and he dodged anything on that front, but I asked him a handful of questions about different items that I thought were important to how this team is going. And I thought he didn't really make eye contact with them after, which is just one of those things that you pick up that's a little different. Because typically, like, they're big rooms that you're in, but when somebody asks a question, they'll still kind of at least look in your way, and it didn't seem like that kind of happened. So did anything stick out to you that Jerome Tang said after the game, aside from some of the things we already discussed?
I think his MO is to be positive, and I think we're seeing him progressively try to stay in that mode. And I do think he's starting to get a little bit defensive on with some of his answers. I think we saw that with, he didn't want to be reflective right now about the season because it's not over yet. But at the same time, you're 9-9 and 0-5, and how did you get here? So that one was, he was, I think he was just kind of avoiding that and trying to keep going with the positive. But I just think at some point that defensiveness, and I think it's carried over from the last two seasons. Like, I think he's feeling that pressure of not being successful and the standard he set for this program in year one, and they're not there. And I think you're seeing that a little bit of frustration coming out, even though he's trying to keep a little more positive and happy face on. It's just not. You can only hide so much of that frustration. I think he's struggling with it.
Yeah, I think that he is frustrated, and it's especially hard to project as frustrated when you're so positive. But at some point, I would like for him to just be honest and kind of tell it how it is about how everything is going, because it hasn't been a fun last 3 seasons at this point, and there's no real end in sight for how it can get better. Because I mean, I'm just thinking about how, unless something drastically changes, this is probably going to be the third, really fourth, if you take into consideration everything that happened, like really hard reset that K-State has gone through in an off season. And that's just not a fun place to be in, because
No,
the only way that you get people bought in when you flip a roster year after year is if you win. And when you don't win, it's really easy to check out and not really care anymore. And that's why people aren't even like mad anymore when K-State loses these games, as much as they just don't really care.
yeah, I mean, really, the only thing that I think is bringing people back is that it's just one of those things that everybody can kind of laugh at and be really disappointed in together. But like, there's real zero interest that's driving people to K-State basketball, because it is just one of those. You go, what's the point? None of these guys are going to be back next year, and you don't want to bring back guys that lose like they do. Like that we were talking beforehand. Like, how many of these guys that can come back do you want back?
And not every year has to be a hard reset with where we are in college basketball. There are teams like Arizona and like Iowa State and like Houston that all win, and they bring players back. Like, I bet that this year Oklahoma State will bring back more players than they have in the past, because they're winning. Winning usually means retention. That's kind of how it goes in this day and age of college basketball. So it doesn't always have to be a hard reset.
Yeah, and it's just, I mean, I think you're right that the losing catches up. Like, because I think we even forget 2 years ago, K-State started out that second season they were 14-4 and 4-1 in the Big 12, and so over Jerome Tang's first 54 games, they won 40. Like, they won 74% of their games. Since then, they've played 67 and won 30. So they've won 45% of their games since basically 2 years ago right now. There's 30 and 37 over that span, and only 15 and 27 against Big 12 teams, including Big 12 tournament. That's 35%. So that's like Jim Woolridge, Tom Asbury, Dana Altman level conference winning percentage over 52 conference games. So that's not a small sample size. That's 2.5 seasons worth, or 2 seasons, full seasons worth of conference games that we're looking at here. And until that flips, the boulder's still rolling down the hill, and it's not looking good. And that is what people think about now when they think of this program. It's not those first 54 games. It's the last 70.
Yeah, and I just think, like, I get to some extent people need to hang in there with you, and it's not always going to be great, but I think it just gets lost too many times that, like, it's not, people aren't supposed to be blind with how they handle this stuff. It's one of those where, like, you have to give a little bit of something, and continuously saying that, oh, we're close and we're doing this right and all of this. Well, that doesn't matter. You can come up close 18 times and lose all 18 because we've seen you do it 5 times already. Nobody cares. You have to get results. This is all about results. And Bruce Weber won a lot of games in ugly fashion, but he got results. And as enjoyable of a watch of a basketball game as this was tonight, I would much rather prefer the 2019 team that came in here against Oklahoma State that basically averaged like 60 points a game, you know? And we heard a little bit of that throughout from Jerome Tang tonight, where, you know, he's telling people that aren't, you know, whatever, to not get on the bandwagon or whatever. It's like, okay, great, but I don't really think I have to worry about there being a bandwagon for this team right now. And that's kind of the point, is if you are not going to ever do anything worthy of it, why should we assume that it's just going to happen? Like, that's, to me, what sticks out the most, and is one of those frustrating things about tonight, is that so many different times an opportunity to reflect on what's going wrong with this program is given, and it's never the right time for Jerome Tang. Well, again, I go back to my biggest point in all this: when things are going poorly and coaches or whoever want to handle this in a totally different way than I think they should, the only reason you're making millions of dollars doing this job is because of the fans. And the fans want and need those answers right now. So I don't care if you're trying to be respectful to your players or trying to give this grand illusion that things can still magically get better, because as much as some want us to believe, we are not idiots. I'm saying not just the 3 of us, but the collective K-State fan base and whatever else you want to loop into there. We saw how the last 2 seasons went. We see how this season is going for K-State. And so there's zero reason for us to believe that it's going to get better. You should be having to answer when I ask, hey, you're 9-9, 0-5. Is that outcome something that is determined once the season gets going, or when you're putting this thing together in May and June? And, you know, he chose not to answer it. But we also got that last year after they got bounced from the Big 12 tournament and the season was over, and it was a colossal failure. Now's not the time to talk about it. We don't get to talk to them during the summer. They go radio silent. This staff likes to do as little media as they can. Okay, so we don't get to hear anything then. And the only positive that the only thing you want out there is positive, because, hey, we're getting these guys. It's going to be fun and exciting. Then idiots like Mason Voth buy into it and think that this team could actually be good. And then here we sit on January 18th, and the season's already been over for 2 weeks because you keep losing to crappy teams and there's no end in sight. So that's the thing that just drives me nuts about this, is I think I gave more than enough opportunity to give meaningful answers to the K-State fan base tonight. And very little times did Jerome Tang decide to take the path to actually give something that I think is going to suffice for K-State fans. And look, I understand that there are going to be instances where it's never enough. We saw that for Chris Kleiman this year, that, you know, he had moments and it wasn't enough for people. All right. But I think people in the end realized, we were probably a little hard on him at times. And he did, I think, try to give at different moments. Was it as much as you wanted or as much as I wanted? No, probably not. But the reflection we're getting from Jerome Tang just isn't enough. And at some point, fans are like your stockholders, and you have to be able to give them a reason or a couple of reasons to believe in this and to see the vision. And he would just rather than be kept in the dark. And he's not running the K-State basketball program. He's running the Jerome Tang basketball program, and that has to stop. All right. Yeah, you guys don't have to comment on that. I won't loop you into that. I'm sure I'm already in the doghouse.
K-State last started 0-6 in the Big 12 in 1997, like we talked about. That year they started 0-9. Do we see a longer streak than that?
I mean,
if they can't win Tuesday night, then probably, like, if they can't go and beat Utah at home,
and
then I don't know.
And they probably, you probably just have guys shut down at that point because you're 0-6, you lose to the worst team in the league. Well, shoot, you lose the second worst team in the league because you are the worst team in the league. We have to start saying that. And, I saw guys tonight, like, I think Kamari McGriff still fighting. Abdi Bashir played well. I still have just questions, and maybe it's the type of player that PJ Haggerty is, but he just seemed very checked out tonight. And again, like, that may just be who he is, but that's kind of a red flag of a player to build around and build this thing around, because we know that Jerome Tang's two best teams had guys that had quite a bit of personality to them and were, I think, natural born leaders in Marquise Noel and Tyler Perry. And we saw last year without a leader, they looked rudderless. And this year, it certainly seems like they're missing something there. So I have my doubts on how this team could keep anything together if they were to lose on Tuesday night to Utah. I mean, maybe you have something in the chamber for the KU game next Saturday. And honestly, I'll tell you this right now, like, you take the win, obviously, if it happens. But if they lose to Utah and their first win in Big 12 play is against KU, I'll be pretty pissed off, because it's not going to happen because they just lucked into it. It will happen because they probably had a little something extra behind it for them. And that will be what happens. And unless they use it to spur them on to go on some miraculous 10-game winning streak, it's just completely pointless. And it's another reason to be frustrated about this season.
Another fun hypothetical, that this one is actually fun. So 9-9 so far this season. It's been a season with a 5-game winning streak, a 4-game losing streak, a 4-game or another 4-game winning streak, and then a 5-game losing streak. Does that mean that a 5-game winning streak is inbound?
Great question.
You never know.
I mean, history would suggest that is going to happen at some point with this team. They do just go on these random heaters with everything. Let's get into some of the comments tonight. Hayden said, should have came and got a hot dog from you, Mason. Might be the best Cats play all season. Hey, look, the hot dog offer was there. Nobody took me up on it. I did call that earlier this week, but
and a lot of K-State fans here.
I have. And someone even took a picture of us from wherever they were and didn't come get the dog. So I don't know what that says about anything, but I will put this out there. If K-State beats Utah on Tuesday, it is contingent on K-State beating Utah. You find me, you get a hot dog for the first 5 people will be in play for the KU game next Saturday. So, I mean, that's a big deal right there. So that's in play. Another side thing just to throw out there. What a week for me. Second person in my life impacted by a car wreck earlier today. Walking into Gallagher, but maybe it was, prophetic for what was going to happen in this building. But my brother tried calling me. He lives in Tulsa, and so he was going to come to the game. And he tries to call me when we're pulling into the parking lot, and I decline it. I'm like, I got to get parked, whatever. And I text him, say, hey, I'll find you when we get into the arena. And then we were doing other stuff. We're heading up to the seat, and I finally looked down at my phone, and I got another missed call and 3 texts, and it says, can you call me? We just got in a wreck. And so somebody hit him. They had green, and somebody turned in and hit him, and I think they're fine. But he was like, "Yeah, we're not coming to the game," and they had to wait on his buddy's parents to drive from Owasso to come pick him up and take him back to Tulsa. So honestly, this was less impactful to me and less important than the lady that cuts my hair getting into the car accident. My brother really wasn't going to provide anything for me tonight. Amy was going to provide me one hell of a service on Tuesday or whatever day that was. Some of the other comments here, Ron says, last play is all you need to know about this coach and staff. We talked about it, and certainly I understand the logic a little bit more. It makes it a little bit better, but we also know that this was the strategy that Jerome Tang employed the first time that we had serious questions about their end of game decisions, when at Texas Tech that year they started 4-1 and really should have been 5-0. They just gave it to Tyler Perry, and their hope was that he was going to get fouled in the lane, a guy that notoriously doesn't drive and doesn't get fouled. And that was when this all kind of started to come up, and that's what you reflect on tonight with what happened. Carl says, at this point, I blame the coaches 1,000%. I see the team is trying, but it can't be this hard. What's your take on that? Because effort obviously gets brought up a lot when teams are losing. What did you guys see tonight? What have you seen over the first couple of games of league play? And is there legitimate effort there? And is it something that the players can't totally control because they're not the ones that built the roster and they're not the ones that do all this? Where do you stand on that?
I'm kind of in between. The effort and the heart is there, but it's there for periodic times, and that consistency isn't necessarily their fault. That's also kind of on the coaching and how to get them to do that all the time needs to be something that gets addressed. But they were extremely locked in on the bench all night. No matter what the score was, everybody was really dialed in and locked in. And players were diving on the floor. And effort is not a huge deal with this team, but it's a huge deal to play hard for 40 minutes consecutively, and they don't necessarily do that.
Yeah, that would be my issue too. I think they played hard. I think they play hard most of the time, but I also think there's effort combined with intensity, and I'm not sure that's always there. And I think that's why you have a half where you give up 48 points in the first half, because you might be playing hard, but you're still making it easy for teams to score on you. So there's something else going on there that goes beyond just the effort side of things, that just the playing hard side of things, and having that different type of mentality to make it super hard on teams to score. You just don't see for 40 minutes with this team. You see it for 15 minutes, maybe 20 minutes, maybe if we're lucky.
Yeah, I don't even know if we
it's
get
really
15.
hard. It's really hard to win games. I thought we saw it a little bit down the stretch, because that was the thing that I wasn't sure that they could do, is get enough stops to have opportunity to win the game. And they did that for the most part, especially in the last 4 minutes, because they gave themselves a chance to win the game. But then, the end happens. But the issue is, when you're on the road, those earlier stretches prevent you from having a 7 or 8 point lead with 3 minutes left and not a 2-point lead.
Yeah.
And then you put yourself in a situation where you can lose it on the last shot or last mistake. That's how, to me, that's how good teams win. People get caught up in your record in close games, which matters, but your record when you win by 8 to 12 is what really good teams do. They don't win a bunch of close games all the time, but they're really good at winning by 10, and that's what makes you good.
Yeah, which to some extent, and not that, your record is what you say you are, but this team won a lot of games in overtime the first 2 seasons of Jerome Tang's career. And since then, they've only played in 1 overtime game, and that was last year against Drake, and they lost it. But they won the first 11 overtime games they played over a 2-year span, and that goes a little bit to what you're saying. I would also say, you bring it up, and, playing hard is certainly a part of this. But, to simplify this, I go back to something that my dad always said to us when we were young, before we were getting ready to go play a basketball game. He'd say 3 things. He'd say, play hard, play smart, have fun. I don't give a crap if these guys are having fun. Win, lose, whatever. Your fun level doesn't matter to me. My fun level does, but playing hard and playing smart, those are the things you need. And that's one of the things that drives me crazy. And Conspiracies Are Us says the amount of 0 IQ play is insane. And I would agree. I see too many times, and I've seen it for a while with this team, where there are some things that I think would be semi-simple fixes to at least try to Band-Aid problems. I know not everybody's going to be a good defensive player. I know that everybody, there are going to be certain guys that have deficiencies in certain areas, but you have to at least be able to try to mask those. And I don't think we've seen enough of that for this team under the leadership that they have over the last few seasons. And it continues. And until you can play smart, you're not going to be able to win many games unless you're overwhelmingly talented. And this team clearly isn't, or at least doesn't fit to what they're trying to do. Orphan says maybe we will get to see Kostic start for the last 8 games. Hey, I would not count on seeing Andre Kostic because apparently he's just everybody else can play dog crap defense, but it's off limits to think that Andre Kostic might do something to help the team, you know? So, yeah, I guess we won't see Andre Kostic. Money well spent. At what point do players pack it in because there's nothing left to play for? I say that time is probably here. We talked about that. Is that a concern that you have, Drew, that this team has some guys that will phone it in? Because that would be the weird thing is that last year's team really didn't, though. Like, we know that they had some problems and they didn't necessarily buy into what the staff was doing, but obviously you don't win 6 games by accident in the Big 12.
I don't think that it's necessarily a huge concern that I have yet. It becomes more of an issue, I think, if they lose to Utah. That's where I'd start to get a little concerned because that's where like the human nature aspect of it kind of comes into more of an effect for me. Of it's like we're now 0-6 if you lose to Utah, and we have to go 10-2 down the stretch. So that's more of like when I think, but I don't know if that will always be an issue on this team, just with how engaged they were tonight. But I mean, again, that's where if you lose another one, it's going to be hard for everybody to keep focused because that's just how it goes.
It's going to be hard for me to keep focus. It already kind of is. A couple of things. These are some quick hitters. RGD says, was Rapiak or Kostic on the bench tonight? Kostic was. He was here. Did not see Moby or Elias Rapiak. They are not out there, and I asked Jerome Tang about it after the game if he had an update or an outlook on them and just said that he can't answer that. So it continues to be strange with them. From my understanding of it and from people that I've talked to, he used HIPAA as a reason he couldn't discuss it Wednesday night. I don't think HIPAA actually applies in this circumstance unless for some reason Elias Rapiak or Moby Ike-Garuka, if it's a medical-related thing, have not signed the NCAA consent form to allow like Jerome Tang and the K-State coaching staff to have access to their medical records or to be involved in that. So, which then would kind of be another just strange thing that, for a totally different reason. So we're not going to get clarity on what's going on with those guys in that situation. And then Nick asked, do the officials only review challenges or could they have looked at replay to see 2 Wildcats calling timeout before the jump ball with seconds left? That's not one that they can review. It's just, they have this list of things that can and can't be reviewed, and it's a lot more black and white in college basketball than it is in the NBA. Just like in the NBA, they can challenge common fouls in NCAA basketball. You cannot do that. So they're pretty clearly defined. So that wouldn't have been something that the officials could have gone back and looked at. Plus, K-State had already wasted their challenge at that point. If you're realizing that, and in the last 2 minutes, the refs have to make that decision, so they easily could have, just said, screw off, we're not doing it, because it does seem like these officials might have something against Jerome Tang. Orphan also said, Tang's comments show he's so insanely out of touch. Wish he was as solid of a dude as Kleiman and realize this isn't working out. It's clear that it's not working out. And look, I'm not of the belief at this point, because I've been given zero reason to on court or with Jerome Tang's words that this thing is going to get fixed. But the best point out there would be is that Chris Kleiman had been a head coach for a long time in college football, and he had been in this for a while. Jerome Tang, this is only his 4th season being the guy. And Chris Kleiman got, 7 seasons out of it at K-State, however many at North Dakota State, and some more at a lower level. Like, he had been through this enough to know just how significantly it had changed. Jerome Tang, even though he's older and similar in age to Chris Kleiman, he's in a totally different career age than Chris Kleiman. So I wouldn't anticipate that happening. Plus, it's very clear that he still believes that they can and will get this fixed. And that's where the difference kicks in, is that Chris Kleiman sat around and maybe he thought that they could, but he didn't want to have to deal with it and try to make it happen, and thought that it was best to hand it off to Colin Klein and make a difference. Last one that we'll take here from Bracket Cat. David has completely regressed in Big 12 play. Was his non-con run just a mirage? I'll give my take real quick and then hand it off to these guys. Part of it, maybe, but I think there was enough that we saw that was genuine growth in his play in the non-conference to say, oh, this is a different guy. But what we started to see towards the tail end of non-con, and then certainly since Big 12 play started, teams realize that he's a legitimate threat when he's on the floor. And I think there was a stretch, especially early on, where I thought teams viewed Bashir and Castillo as the two most dangerous guys on K-State's team because they could score at a different level. Haggerty's going to get his 24 every night or whatever it is, but it's not a deadly 24. Castillo and Bashir are the ones that could really kill you if they have a night where they get going and they score 20 plus. And so teams, I think, kind of realized that and locked in a little bit more on him. So I think it's just as simple as he's only a sophomore. He made a little bit of a jump, but teams recognize that. And unfortunately, the rest of the team isn't so good to where Castillo can be a really nice fourth or fifth. He kind of has to be the second or third best player when he's in the game, and it makes it a lot easier for other teams to kind of deal with. So that's my view on it.
Yeah, I think that he might also just be pressing too much, honestly, because things haven't been going his way the last handful of games. But you're going to get like peaks and valleys with younger players. I think that he'll be fine. There's nothing to suggest that he will like resort to how he was beforehand. I mean, he just needs to see the ball go in the basket a little bit, and I wouldn't mind if they drew up some plays to get him better looks.
Yeah, I think we're seeing also his size. He's not as big a guy, and he's seeing longer people guarding him. And I think you're right, Mason, that he's not the sixth or seventh guy that on the scouting report. He's in the top 3 or 4 that other teams are looking at and how to stop him. I thought maybe his ability to get into the paint would help him because he did show. I mean, he did it against Creighton. He did it against some pretty good teams, but that's been something he's struggled with. He struggled with it a big time in Big 12 play is being able to finish and get those shots in the paint. And I think you're right, Mason. I think because he had that success, I think he is pressing a little bit now since that success has gone away in Big 12 play. I still think he's going to have a stretch in Big 12 play where he comes back to scoring 12 to 15 points a game for a while because he's capable. He's shown he's capable. And his efficiency numbers and shooting numbers are still really good, even with the regression he's had as Big 12 play started. But I do think that's caught up with him. Plus, he didn't play a lot last year. Like he's having to play real minutes this year, and I think might be getting worn down a little bit as well. So that combination of things, I think, is factored into what we've seen from him in the league.
I'll address the comment from Carl Page about the NIL stuff. NIL is not a problem with K-State. K-State has one of the best NILs actually in the conference. That's all I'll say on that. We can move on.
Yeah, money not
PJ
the problem.
Haggerty is not playing for free.
No.
And Coleman Hawkins last year didn't play for free.
Yeah, and that's the problem here is that at the end of the day, the financial restrictions are not a thing for K-State. So either comes down to the player's personality or the player's skill, and the people that are in charge of bringing the players into the program, not necessarily the players. Somebody has to reach out to them first. So take your pick on who you think that might be. But, yeah, that's where things stand, and another not-so-fun night for K-State basketball. They are 0-5 in Big 12 play, now 9-9, and have to hope to get a win against Utah or things start to get really bleak on Tuesday. So that will do it for us. We'll get out of here, wind down before we hit 1 a.m. Appreciate everybody joining us tonight, as always, on KSO Postgame Live. We will be back on Monday. Drew and I have to talk about Brandon White, the wide receiver from Hawaii that K-State just picked up to potentially start to put the final touches on the K-State transfer portal class. So we'll get to football there, and then another Postgame Live coming at you. A little bit of a later one on Tuesday against Utah with the 8 o'clock tip, not as bad as tonight. And then we'll resume everything as normal throughout the week unless anything out of the ordinary pops up. So that'll do it for us tonight from Stillwater. For Drew Galloway, KSU fan, I'm Mason Voth saying thank you. And we appreciate you joining us from Gallagher-Iba Arena here in the lovely campus of Oklahoma State University that gave us wristbands tonight. Just, I think, for the fun look of them. So, I don't know. We'll see. Iowa State level expenses being given here.